Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Weber with the University of Texas, and I've got this Power Across Texas Power Minute question. Should we have carbon legislation in the United States? Why or why not?
Why not?
Absolutely, we should. I think what the industry craves more than anything, and have craved for some period of time, is certainty. Certainty about the carbon future is going to be. And no matter what one's view is on climate change, whether that's a proper motivation, I think the debate is largely over, and there is a recognition broadly a day when carbon is going to be priced is soon coming. And so getting that designed, and getting it designed properly, and providing the much desired certainty to the industry is critical. And the sooner that happens, the sooner companies can factor that into their decision-making process and make the kinds of infrastructure investments that need to be made to serve the energy needs of the country.
Why not?
Well, we at Energy, we strongly support federal carbon legislation, in part because if we don't regulate carbon at the federal level, we'll get a patchwork of state legislation. Having said that we support federal carbon legislation, we're very concerned about how it's implemented. And that particularly given the economic situation we're in, it has to be very mild in its impact in the early years, what we call a long runway. But overall, we think it's essential that a price be put on carbon because the marketplace will not solve for something that does not have a price attached to it. So that's why we support federal carbon legislation.
Well, honestly, I think we should probably get a better goal than just carbon. We should have a goal for how efficient do we want our energy usage to be. Our energy efficiency today in the U.S. is what it was when we had President Eisenhower. 33% of all the heat value and energy value in a block of oil or coal or natural gas or uranium is actually something that's useful to a customer. If we can move that to 50% like the country of Denmark has done, that would be a goal. All right, having said that, if carbon is the next largest kind of end game, we ought to go ahead, decide on some really balanced terms, which is a big challenge, and then get there. It took 10 years to get a relatively comprehensive telecommunications bill back in '96. I think this is probably 5 or 10 times as complicated. It's going to take a while to do. So yes, if this is what we're going to do, let's get started. But I do wish it was something really comprehensive like energy efficiency on a broad scale.
I think we need to be mindful of climate change and the causes and ways to mitigate that. I don't think in this economic time that it is particularly appropriate. The cost drivers are enormous, and manufacturers and most major U.S. employers compete internationally and operate internationally. If it's global warming and not just climate change, it's a global answer and not just a United States answer. To put the kind of cost associated that we've seen with a cap and trade or even a carbon tax on U.S. manufacturers will put us at a greater disadvantage in a global market. I know that some of our friends and colleagues in the electric production industry are saying the right things and going to D.C. and saying that they're amenable somewhat to carbon cap and trade or carbon tax, and I would argue that they don't compete on a global level. Particularly in Texas, they're in a captured market. They compete with one another here within our grid, and the same goes for the national-based electric generators. We, as manufacturers, will end up paying the higher cost as we're emitters as well with any carbon cap and trade or carbon tax, and we're going to pay an increased cost of electricity. From Warner Lieberman, the bill that was filed 2 years ago, we have cost estimates from the National Association of Manufacturers that show Texas job loss up to 300,000 employees and energy costs increasing anywhere from 44 to 130%. With electricity being the #1 cost driver for Texas manufacturers, it's just untenable. So while we're now competing globally, we're paying a higher price of energy, and again, our friends at the electric companies aren't having that competition. So I would argue that now is absolutely the wrong time for the U.S. government to impose carbon cap and trade or a carbon tax.